The leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, he's here in Ottawa in the House of Commons, I believe. Mr. Singh, good to see you as always.
Thank you. Good to see you.
I know that you had stipulated in the agreement with the Liberals that you wanted to see dental care very specifically outlined as it had been in your platform in this budget document. You got that. But there are things that I read in this budget document that immediately made me think, oh, is the NDP going to be okay with that? This is something normally that they would not be endorsing. And I'm thinking specifically of the more than $2 billion worth of tax credits for carbon capture and storage, essentially subsidies for companies that big resource-based companies that decide to pursue that. And then what happened yesterday with the green light of Bay du Nord, which will, lots of arguments for it, understandably, but will have an impact on the environment, most certainly. What is the red line for you?
Well, these are two things that you've outlined that we were absolutely opposed to. We think that it's wrong to increase subsidies of fossil fuel companies. We had said really clearly we believe in ending those subsidies because we think public money should go towards workers, should go towards renewable energy. And the Bay du Nord project is an expansion of fossil fuels that's going to increase emissions in light of the recent IPCC report, which states we are failing in terms of action on the climate crisis and things are getting worse, and that we have to act now. Both these decisions are the wrong thing to do. And carbon capture, in addition, has some questionable impacts in terms of will it actually work. So those are things that we oppose. We think they're the wrong decision. They do not take us to where we need to be in terms of fighting the climate crisis.
So then what does it say about your party and your role in this government if the Liberals feel that they can just do that?
Well, this is not a New Democrat government. This is a Liberal government. And the Liberal government's doing things that we don't agree with.
But you're keeping it in power with respect.
When we form government, we would have a different budget. We would have a New Democrat budget. What we've been able to achieve as in this minority government is listen to Canadians who said, we need help. We can't get our teeth fixed. 1 in 3 Canadians can't get their teeth looked after. And we said, we're going to deliver for you. So we brought in the biggest expansion of public health care in a generation with real help to get people the ability to fix their teeth, starting with kids under 12 and expanding from there. We're able to get meaningful action on housing, far more action on housing than the Liberals had ever intended in this budget. We're able to significantly change the definition of what is affordable. Changing that definition of affordable has completely been a game changer in terms of the type of investments that happen. Initially, the Liberals' definition was 30% of median income, which resulted in, for example, in Montreal, $2,250 being considered affordable. We put in this budget, we were able to force our definition, which is far better, which is 80% of the average market rate. In doing that, when we apply that to the Montreal example, that would mean affordable would be $967. So that significantly changes the scope of all the investments. In addition, they had only accounted for 20% of a build being affordable. We've doubled that to 40%. This was clearly written into the agreement. This is our definition, and we did that to fight back against the crisis in housing in a meaningful way. So those two steps are going to be life-changing for Canadians. They'll get their teeth fixed, and they'll be able to find a home that's in their budget a lot easier. So those are some big things that are going to make life better for Canadians.
But they're also going to see, detrimental effects on climate. Because of what the government is proposing. And you say that it's a Liberal government, but it's a government in power for the next number of years because you've made a deal to support it.
Well, we're going to oppose where we think they've made a mistake or they've done the wrong thing. But
will it have a material difference?
Where they've made priorities that are not in line with what we're up against. So we'll oppose that. We will fight back against that. And we will get help to Canadians. Both of those things are important. And the agreement outlines that we will disagree, that we will oppose, and we will fight back. And when it comes to the environment, it is clear this government has made the wrong choice and continues to make the wrong choice, whether it's approving the Bay du Nord project or in terms of carbon capture and massive tax credits, which we think are absolutely wrong to do.
Just before I let you go, I do want to ask you about one other subject. And I've heard you in a number of interviews being asked about the 2% of GDP on defense spending. You said it was an arbitrary target. In your discussions with the government in the lead up to this, and I believe you said in your press conference yesterday or the day before that you have been briefed, did you stipulate that you would not like to see that path? Was it part of any kind of arrangement between you and the government?
We laid out our priorities and said that we don't want to see an increase of 2%. Funny enough, the Conservatives are complaining about increased spending. They wanted an increase of $25 billion in spending in 1 year, not spread over multiple years. $25 billion is more in 1 year than the entire cost of our pharmacare and our dental care program, and they don't propose any revenues either. So I think it's very, very rich that Conservatives talk about their concerns about spending too much when they asked to spend $25 billion in 1 year, far more than all the programs we're talking about cost. So I think that's a little bit of a contradiction. But we laid out that we don't want that 2%. We don't think it's appropriate, but we do see a need to invest in the men and women that serve in our armed forces having the equipment that they need to do their jobs, in addition to understanding that the world does feel less safe and that we do need to make investments to make sure Canadians feel safer. And so we understood that some increase was appropriate given what we're up against in the world.
What do you base the assessment that the 2% target is arbitrary on? Germany just announced a whole ton, $100 billion of new defense spending. Other allies in Europe have also announced new spending. Allies have agreed to that 2%. It doesn't feel so arbitrary when all of our Western allies have said 2% is the target to go for. What do you base that assessment on? Well,
for Canada, that would be a massive increase in spending. I think that that spending is just not something we can afford at this point in time to bump up to $25 billion just in 1 year alone. To do that all in one shot, I think is not reasonable, not something that we could actually afford to do. And many experts have agreed that it would require an entire rethink of the purpose of the Canadian Armed Forces. And so just increasing by that amount would just not be feasible. In addition, we did acknowledge, though, some increases would be appropriate, given how much our armed forces were able to do in this crisis to help Canadians in long-term care homes in that crisis, both in Ontario and Quebec. They were vital. And so increased recruitment for personnel and the equipment. And we've heard lots of concerns about the equipment not being sufficient to do the work that they need to do. So we envision some increases being appropriate. Support to Ukraine, absolutely appropriate and necessary. So those were very important, prudent decisions, and we supported that. But we thought that increasing to $25 billion in spending on top of the existing spending, it would not be appropriate and not be feasible for Canada. At the outset of Russia's war on Ukraine, your party was not supportive of Canada sending lethal aid. Given what the images over the last week have shown about the war crimes committed in Bucha, in Irpin, has your party changed its position? Well, we absolutely support providing Ukrainians with the weapons they need to defend themselves. We've seen horrific crimes, war crimes, humanitarian crisis, a violation of the dignity of life. It's been horrific. And it's unimaginable not to be able to support Ukrainians in their ability to defend themselves. Given what we've seen, we absolutely support supporting them. Your party position has changed since the war started. I don't think anyone could have looked at what happened in Bucha, the horrific loss of life, the violence against women, against people, innocent civilians, bombing of infrastructure, and not think that Ukrainians need to be supported to defend themselves. Okay, Mr. Singh, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. Thank you. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.